No, you are right. To the extent if we can have a meeting for other agendas, that's okay. And maybe time is not right for that. I would agree with you. If at all we can have a meeting for such other agenda.
Abona Wamalo, of course you interact with other members of Jubilee Party. What is your understanding of what's going on within Jubilee?
You know, I'm very close to Senator Kang'ata, and I know the dilemma is in. From the look of things, we know very well that Jubilee is falling apart. And it reminds me of the words of Chinua Achebe, things fall apart. That when the center cannot hold, things fall apart. It's not milk and honey in Jubilee. And I can be able to give a trend. In the first term of Jubilee government in power, the president and his deputy, the words they were using, my brother. We have now moved from my brother to kutangatanga. We moved from kutangatanga, lifestyle, na hata huyu. That is a clear indication that in Jubilee there is fire. And it's just a matter of time. And of course, when you call a PG, you don't call a PG just for the sake of maybe to resolve your differences. A PG can be there to advance the party position when it comes to a legislative agenda on the floor of the House. And in this case, we know very well that recently we had the Treasury CS, after bringing the budget highlights and putting measures of how you're going to fund it. So the finance bill actually is on the floor of the House. And in fact, we've fast-tracked it. You know, it's the only bill that you can fast-track. We've gone through the first reading, second reading. We are fast-tracking it. So to me, it was very critical for Jubilee to have that PG so that they can be able to tell their members that here, for us to fund the full agenda of the president, we must be able to pass this bill. But we do know very well that Honorable Kang'ata, as far as the hierarchy of Jubilee is concerned, is junior. And I don't want him to mislead the public, because in terms of communication, the majority leaders, they're the ones who get the information, then they communicate to the whip. The whip gets instructions from the leaders. They don't get instructions from the presidency. So if the leaders give the instructions to the whip, and he's a deputy whip, then from there is when they communicate to the members, not necessarily through email, maybe through SMS.
Or WhatsApp.
But what we know, or WhatsApp for that matter, what we know, there are two critical differences that have emerged. We've seen the utterances of Murkomen. We've seen the utterances of Wambugu, the MP for Nyeri. You know, we've had differences or utterances from Kamau Ichung'wah. So the big difference that is there in Jubilee, one wants to drive the agenda of the president. The president wants to leave a positive legacy in terms of unity, who support the handshake, and also support the full agenda, who support the fight against corruption and lifestyle audits.
Yes.
But the other faction is totally against, who are questioning this handshake, the implication of the handshake, the lifestyle audit, and they also want to be clear in terms of the succession of 2022.
Okay.
So after they realize, and of course they are accessible to NIS information, when they realize that people are likely to fight at State House, so the only honorable thing to have done was to call it off, because State House is the highest office on the land that needs that respect. So really, there's fire burning under Jubilee. Okay. It's just a matter of time.
Professor Odwal, of course, we may look at it from a simplistic view that it's just party politics. But the fact that the ruling party is unable to hold a parliamentary group meeting will have implications, even as Chris Omalo says, puts it, that yes, even the financial bill could have issues in terms of marshalling support in Parliament. Issues to do with the Big Four agenda, because even your party leader now supports the Big Four agenda of the president. All that could be affected simply because there's wrangling or perceived wrangling within Jubilee. Don't you think that, yes, this is one of those things that is important, even to the ordinary Kenyan? The fact that Jubilee, the ruling party, which is supposed to drive all these things to help the public, is unable to get its house in order.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fred. I think what I would say is that Kenyans might not be that surprised to see what is happening, because generally we know that the handshake was really an effort to reconcile the struggle that we have been through for a very long time, whether we are going to maintain the status quo, where by and large you would find that power is used not necessarily in the interest of everyone in Kenya, to an attempt to shift. And I think we need to acknowledge that if we were to look at what came out of the handshake on March 9th, a key issue was how we would get national ethos, get inclusivity. And to that extent, when you look at the President Uhuru's legacy, and including even the Big Four agenda, you see an attempt to then shift from an opportunity where some Kenyans had felt that they were excluded, some Kenyans were really, demoralized, and where there wasn't a clear effort from the top leadership, the presidency himself, to tackle corruption. So I think when we see what is happening right now, we just need to acknowledge that there are times when the vision or the end game that is seen to be prioritized by leadership is not the same. And I think what we are seeing in Jubilee is really that when we look at the vision, or if you like, the end game of President Uhuru as compared to that of the deputy, there is that, the division, and therefore the parliamentary groups are likely, because in politics people tend to align to their leader. I believe therefore that what is urgent is a sense in which we would want to get back to the point where Kenyans really would want to be one. We don't want a situation where some Kenyans think they are looking from outside.
Yes, and of course the Daily Nation has exactly put it the way you have, that there are two groupings, according to the Daily Nation. One section of MPs wants the party to focus on Uhuru's legacy and the Big Four agenda, which could also be discussed at the parliamentary group meeting. The other opposing section wants the party to do more to secure the presidency for Ruto. It's approximately less than 8 months since the repeat election that was held on October 26th last year. Don't you think it's a bit too soon for us to even be talking about these kinds of divisions, these kinds of lack of alignment of the ideology for Jubilee? If at all this is what is happening, that there are people who feel we should be heading this direction, the others feel we should be making a turn to this other side.
Yes, indeed. I think it is too soon for us to focus on the so-called divisions in Jubilee Party, because we want to focus on the so-called Agenda 4. And therefore, I think, personally, from where I sit, we need now to stop focusing on the so-called politics. We discuss economics. We discuss socio-economics development of Kenyans.
And do you think that is why such a meeting was so crucial to be held at this point, so that, yes, you can get all sides or every mind within Jubilee to start focusing on one agenda?
No, well, to the best of my knowledge, there's no split. Why meet? You are saying as if we do have a division in Jubilee.
We're talking about the headlines. And
well, I disagree.
You're dismissing this headlines.
Yes, indeed. I disagree, totally.
What about the perception? Because politics is also about perception, and the public could be worried that if at all the ruling party cannot hold together, then probably even this agenda by the president may not see the light of day. That all these things that the president has been talking about may not get to see the light of day, if at all there are groupings within Jubilee Party that are not aligned to that.
Well, I agree. You see, the problem with perceptions, they're usually created by forces beyond you. Let's say, for instance, the citizen may come and say, no, you Kang'ata, you belong to this faction, you belong to this faction. What do? You just stay and listen. You see, we cannot interfere with the independence, isn't it? How you craft the reality, how you craft us, what do? We just listen. So to me, I think we just pray, you people in the media, you get saved.
Yes,
I think the media is there to present facts the way they are, in a very objective manner. So the media, you don't need to get saved. We're just reporting.
Although there's nothing bad about salvation.
Absolutely. No, from the context of salvation, what he's saying is totally different, because he's portraying the media as in you are misreporting. Yes. You get. So we are trying to analyze that from the context. So we need to understand where he's coming from. But based on that context, I'll say no. I'll oppose that. But having said the issue of it's too early, you know, in this country, there's a lot of attention when it comes to presidency. And I've seen some people come and say, we are part of the government, we want to eat the national cake, what have you. This issue of succession politics of 2022, it's not going anywhere. And why it's continuing is just because Jubilee, during their campaigns, I remember very well, His Excellency the President, Uhuru Kang'ata, said we have the 20-year rule of the Jubilee government. 10 years for Uhuru Kenyatta, 10 years for William Ruto. But we are seeing the 10 years of William Ruto, there's an obstacle there. There are a section of the Jubilee members who are threatened with William Ruto. William Ruto is an ambitious and aggressive politician, and that I salute him for that. But now, you know, there's an academic paper which says if you are, if you understand the normal distribution curve, people who are ambitious, who are aggressive, that theory says you rarely go to the peak of leadership. The people who rise up and reaches the peak are the moderates, if you understand the normal distribution curve. Okay? So when you look at William Ruto, people see him, these ambitions and all that. The first term of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and these are things we discuss, people are like, the president did not enjoy the presidency in the first term. William Ruto was on his case. As a matter of fact, when it came to sharing the cabinet, it was like a Nusumkata government, whereby William Ruto has 50, the president has 50. In fact, some of the people from central Kenya, if they wanted to gain some favorable positions, including Kang'ata here, they had to go to William Ruto. So the powers William Ruto had in the first term, actually, they say Uhuru never enjoyed. But come the second term, because the president is not going to seek any seat, and the deputy president has helped him, now they are saying, this time we are going to see a different Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
Who are these people you are referring to?
A section, and I can name them here.
Name them.
No, I'll name them.
No, name.
Just name them.
No, name them.
No, you know, I do my analysis objectively, and I'm entitled to my own opinions.
Oh, including
we've seen even David Murang'a coming out. David Murang'a, for heaven's sake, is not even a parliamentary, and he has given instructions, and these are very close ally to the president, and he has said it. In the second term, you're going to see a different Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
But how much time does he have?
The president now, his focus, he wants to leave a positive legacy and fight against corruption.
Yes.
But there's another section of the same Jubilee members who are totally against it.
Yes.
So the issue is this, it's just a matter of time. We're going to see the house burning.
That's the issue, Professor.
Absolutely.
Just before we come to you, Kang'ata, that's a big issue, time. President Uhuru Kenyatta doesn't have much time left. Already 1 year of his second term is almost gone. And all this wrangling, the president is yet to settle down and focus on his Big Four agenda. If this thing continues, he might not get time at all to do anything. Now, do you think that we run a risk that Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency, especially in this second term, might be not as beneficial as it was touted to be to Kenyans because of this wrangling?
I think we certainly do, and I believe that's why it's a good thing that we see that the agenda setting approach that the media has taken should be applauded. The media really has a very critical role in terms of getting the debate, providing a direction for the debate, and getting the Kenyans to begin to reflect and to, you know, add their voice to what it is that matters to them. I think what I would want to emphasize and really appeal to Kenyans to look at is that what we are seeing is really not just about President Uhuru Kenyatta and the Big Four agenda. I really see that all the way from 2002, when Kenyans have been fighting for a reform, they've been looking to see that we have institutions functioning. We've had all kinds of institutions of good governance that have been put in place. They've been looking to see that the Constitution of 2010 would deliver not only from the perspective of legislation by the parliamentary group, but also by all the other arms, judiciary and executive. Indeed, when the president came to parliament and delivered his State of the Nation address, he appealed and really spoke to parliament and said, give me the tools. You know, the Constitution has given us the guidelines. Kenyans are looking to us. There are a number of issues that we need to handle. And so from my perspective, Fred, is that we need to thank the media for giving us a sense of what it is that is taking place. And I do hope that as the leadership will begin to see that we would want to take our focus from elections and electioneering and come back to look at the way that we will address issues that would allow institutions to function, would enable us to get a sense in which we get greater preparedness, and would really get to a Kenya where all Kenyans, regardless of their leanings or preferences of a candidate for presidency, are. I think what I see happening right now is that there is this sense in which, on the one hand, there are those Jubilee members or parliamentarians or party members who are thinking more about how you organize right now for 2022. But there is another that is aware and alert to what happened last year. Kenya came to a point where some people were even saying they're willing to secede. So I think there are others that are saying, no, let's try and see if we can sort out and begin to work together.
Uramalo, you want to say something?
This division in Jubilee is going to negate the Agenda 4 of the President. If you look at the way things are moving on, the other day I saw the Kikuyu Council of Elders, the Secretary General, I think Peter Munga. I don't know whether it's a Peter Munga of Equity. And this is somebody you cannot wish away.
No, it is not him.
It's not him.
We cannot confirm that.
We cannot confirm that. Who came out and said that William Ruto must retire with President Uhuru Kenyatta. We've seen people coming and saying it's not guaranteed that the Mount Kenya votes or the Central Kenya votes, they are going to be with William Ruto. So that tells you there's a concerted effort to block William Ruto from succeeding President Uhuru Kenyatta. When it comes to Parliament right now the way it is, and don't be surprised to see a motion of impeaching the President coming out, because we discussed with MPs, and there are a section of MPs who are so bitter about this succession of 2022. They are saying our man is being betrayed.